Hello, folks. Sorry I couldn't be there today. Fatherly duties kept me at home, but I definitely wanted to relay the message regarding the action plan for the special day class. And what I'll do is I'll go through the PowerPoint. You guys can kind of follow along as I go from slide to slide. I also wore black. They say black makes you look smaller on TV. So next time we see each other, you can let me know if it worked or not, right? Anyway, if we start the PowerPoint, we go to the first slide. We talk about the facts. And the facts are that our SDC, which is our special day class composition on the Herbert Green campus, has gotten to the point where we need to make some changes in order to facilitate services for those children correctly and appropriately. The current numbers, and this is slide number 2, past the original page. We have 6 fifth graders in the class, 8 sixth graders in the class, 4 seventh graders, and 3 eighth graders in that class right now, to total a 21 student population. I believe there may be another body being added as we speak. We have to confirm that. The average size of an SDC class usually has 10 to 12 students, so obviously we're way above and beyond that. We kind of saw this coming. We played it out the way we could with regards to having one teacher for that many kids. Now, when we talk about one teacher for that many children in an SDC environment, we're going to talk a little bit about what that really means. You have case management that you have to worry about, which is the annual IEPs, the triennial IEPs, the regular everyday mom or dad wants to meet type of IEPs, the reactive IEPs, something's going on and we have to get together as a team and facilitate some type of change for the child, etc. If you move to the next slide, it talks about the IEP disabilities, and it goes through the disabilities that you'll see in special day classes, which are specific learning disabilities, intellectual disabilities, emotional disturbances, and other health impaired. Other health impaired is usually associated with something like ADHD. Not all the time, it could be something different as well. It's really talking more about that particular area. It's talking more about having limited strength, vitality, or alertness, and is due to some type of chronic or acute health problem, which ADHD actually falls under. Those students are mainstreamed with their same grade level peers, no matter what the disability. So, and it's always going to be to the extent that's tolerable by that child. So what's functional for that individual child. Okay, so that means that they don't stay in the same classroom all day long. All of these children are going out into the general educational environment. It may not be at the same time, it may not be for the same amount of time, etc., but they are moving about the campus. Case management, we'll go on to the next slide. The average annual IEP takes about 2 hours of prep time by the case manager. There's a system called the Statewide Special Education Information System, SACE, that we have to put all our information into. So there's data entry involved. The other thing is you have to create goals for the particular student as a draft to present to the team. You have to get information from the gen ed teachers and any other teacher that has access to that child. You have to call the personnel in order to be vigilant about who's going to show up at the meeting and who's available, who's not, etc. So there's a lot of different things that go on, but this is the legal part of the IEP. These are the things that will get you into a lot of trouble with, like, California Department of Education if you don't do them correctly. The average triennial, so every 3 years you have to reevaluate that child to make sure that they still qualify for special education. That means testing and assessments. So the average triennial takes 5 hours or more of prep time by the case manager, because they have academic testing they have to do. They have to facilitate everyone that's involved as assessors, as well as anyone else coming to the meeting as a resource. They have to develop the IEP, the draft of the document. They have to do the data input, etc., etc. The average initial IEP, and this is when a student doesn't have an IEP and they come to us for special ed assessments, and we have to determine if they're eligible or not, takes about a little longer, about 5.5 hours of prep time, simply because in initial there's a little more involved than someone who already has an established IEP. So if we move to the next slide, we talk about teaching. The SDC teacher is responsible for the English language arts and the math curriculum for those students. So usually, and it doesn't mean never, but usually SDC students will stay with their particular home teacher for English language arts and math, and then they'll venture out into the mainstream or the gen ed setting for more of the other courses, which would be your history, your science, etc. It doesn't mean always, because there are some circumstances where a child has very, very good skills in English language arts or very, very good skills in math, but not so much in the other core curriculum area. And they could go out for one or the other as well. But what this does mean is that this teacher is providing instruction for 4 levels, 4 grade levels, or more sometimes, it appears. And then within those grade levels, different levels of ability. So you may have 7 6th graders, and out of those 7 6th graders, 2 of them are reading at a 2nd grade level, 2 of them are reading at a 5th grade level, 2 of them aren't reading yet, so it just depends on the composition of your class. And the reason we're bringing this to attention is to let you know how difficult these positions are. So when we start increasing numbers, as well as all these different variables that they have to deal with, you can kind of see how it becomes almost an impossible task to service these kids appropriately. Some SDC students are working strictly off of goals. So when you have a child that's a lower cognitive ability, they may be intellectually disabled, they may be very low functioning with autism or something of that nature, then they'll work off their goals as far as their promotion criteria to the next grade level. Other kids are working just as anybody else. They're working off of actual grades, the district type of report cards, etc. And so you have a convolution of those type of students in an SDC program. If we move to the next slide, we talk about how SDC teachers are required to train educationally appropriate behaviors in a classroom. So we have a couple of situations like this right now where we have students who were in the RSP program and spent the majority of their day in the gen ed curriculum area, but they're really struggling educationally with regards to their behavior. When that happens, then we do a lot of interventions in place to see if we can keep them in that least restrictive environment. If not, then they have to be moved to the SDC, which is a greater restrictive environment, but it allows for less students and more adults. And sometimes that's what that student needs in order to kind of get back into the understanding of what is expected behaviorally in order to be able to access educational benefit. So if they go from a classroom of 30 children to a classroom of 12, 10 children, something of that nature, it makes a big difference as far as us being able to access that child through those behaviors and train them to be appropriate with their behaviors throughout the day. The next step in this special ed continuum is basically going into a county program or a non-public school. So for instance, if we bring a kid into the SDC program and they're still not able to access educational benefit due to behaviors or due to some type of functional learning issues that we just can't service on our campus because we don't have that level of capacity, then we have to send that child to a county program which specializes in whatever area, or we have to send them to a non-public school. In doing so, obviously we accrue more costs, but even more importantly than that, that child is no longer with their neighborhood peers. They're no longer in their neighborhood environment. They're going to school with kids that don't come from where they come from, basically is what I'm saying. So we want to avoid that as much as possible. But that is what the teaching facts are in a special day class. Now if we move to the next frame, we talk about mainstreaming. And I said a little bit about it already. Each group of SDC students go out into the mainstream. They go out to the gen ed population and they go to classes just like anyone else. When they do so, we send staff support with them. So someone's in that classroom other than the general educational teacher that can facilitate assistance for those children, because we know that they struggle, in certain areas. Gen Ed classes go at a certain speed. It's kind of like a train. You're not going to stop the train. You're not going to slow it down. You just really need to be able to access it. In order to do that, we have accommodations and modifications that are made for those SDC students as well as RSP, but right now we're focusing on SDC. So, but we have those things in place for those students, and we have adult support that's available to them so that they can kind of catch on and be productive in those classes. The grading is modified to reflect the curriculum. So we modify the curriculum, we have to modify the grading a lot of times. That's done by the SDC teacher as well. So as you can see, there's a lot of responsibility we place on our SDC teachers. And when we increase numbers and we're above and beyond where those numbers need to be, it's extremely difficult to service the children appropriately. The process also requires the SDC teacher to be able to consult with the Gen Ed staff so that they are on the same page as what the expectations for those students are. Some of those students go into the Gen Ed that are working on goals for their grades. So if they're working through the IEP goals for their grades, they're in that Gen Ed class for a different reason than an SDC student who actually is accessing at a greater clip and is able to do more, and their ability level is higher, and they may be graded on the district progress report card. That's a different situation. So again, with all these multiple factors, it's very difficult to juggle all this as one teacher. If we move to the next slide, we start to talk about what is our proposal. I knew at the beginning of the school year, with the numbers that we had, that eventually we would probably outgrow our SDC program having only one teacher. We waited as long as we could. We facilitated with instructional assistants. We facilitated with scheduling. We facilitated with different interventions to be able to kind of hold on as long as we could without having to add another credential person into the mix. But we're there. We're beyond there, if I'm telling the truth here. So what we want to do is we want to hire a 1.0 FTE ed specialist and a mild, moderate credential. And the reason being is the makeup of this class have mild, moderate students, and it has mod severe students. We have very, very few situations where you see in today's society where you see a whole class of mod severe on a district campus, or a whole class of mild moderate SDC students on a district campus. It's usually a mix. And what the state law says is that you have to have the credential for the students that you serve. So the current SDC teacher, Miss Michelle Justice, has a mod severe credential. Therefore, she can service any mod severe student as well as the mild moderate students. And the new person that we want to hire should have a mild moderate credential, so that when we bifurcate the numbers, we can place, because the vast majority of the children that we see in our program are mild moderate in their needs. So then the new person can indeed facilitate the mild moderate population. That also gives us the autonomy of later on, if we have to split out and revamp the program to include maybe some RSP students, etc., in like a learning center model, we can do that. The second thing we want to talk about is that bifurcation of the class between the two teachers. So currently we have 6 mod severe students in the SDC program. So the one teacher that exists right now, Miss Michelle Justice, would take on those 6, or keep those 6, I should say, and then as well as fill in her numbers with the rest mild moderate students. The new teacher will come on and only serve mild moderate students in the SDC setting. If we go to the next slide, we talk about the third piece, which is eventually, and I kind of alluded to it already, is create a learning center environment. That environment can facilitate remediation instruction, which can include Gen Ed students, SDC students, RSP students, basically any student. We're starting to see that more and more now as a need on our campus. That would also affect the number of 504 plans we have, which is through Gen Ed, as well as SSTs, which are student study teams, that are created so that if a parent comes and says, or a teacher or anyone